When you fall down, you have to get back up.
When is it gonna happen to me?
It's hard to have patience. I mean, it is. If you really want it bad enough, you cannot skip steps.
Be grateful for what you got.
If you really want to get on that grind and you don't like your job,
I'm still cooking their bacon.
because you're always going to be wondering, what if?
Damn, I'm only here for one reason and one reason only, though. Patience starts now.
Welcome back to another episode of Patience the Podcast with your host, Donnie D.
And your host, Sammy G.
Today we have a very special guest for all of you avid travelers out there. She's the head of risk analysis for Northcott Global Solutions, a UK-based company specializing in global emergency crisis response, tracking, travel management, and remote logistics. She's a former trainee with NATO Headquarters Counterterrorism and Emerging Security Challenges Division and has volunteered as a caseworker for victim support, specially trained in sexual violence with young victims, antisocial behavior, bereavement by homicide, and major incident response, and the founder and CEO of an initiative called She Travel, a women's-only network and an online-based forum for female travelers to share information to aid safe travel. Annalisa Tampo, welcome to Patience the Podcast.
Pleasure to be with you. Thank you very much for having me. It's fantastic to be able to talk about female travelers and safety considerations, so I'm very happy to join you.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time. You, of course, are our first international guest from across the pond. You've just returned from holiday in Croatia.
Yes, it was wonderful. I love Croatia. We were there for only a couple of days, but absolutely beautiful. Anyone's just not been there yet, I fully recommend. Beautiful islands, beautiful sea, absolutely fantastic.
I hear it's quite the travel destination. We would love to know a little bit more about your background in global security and your personal and professional experiences that led to a substantial role in birthing the vision that you had for She Travel.
So I've been head of risk analysis for a global emergency response company for a while now. I've been with the company almost about 5 years, and we deal with quite interesting cases from all around the world. So I've been privileged to see and understand the way that people travel and travel destinations. Prior to that, I was a trainee with NATO counterterrorism team, as you mentioned, and also supported a few projects for the military side of house, Gender Advisory Office and Special Representative for Women, Peace and Security. So that's where my interest in women and peace and security really grew. I also did some research around female engagement in terrorism and increase in female suicide bombers. So I've always had that kind of interest. And as you mentioned briefly about victim support and my volunteer casework, that also showed me a side of life that taught me a lot of new skills, but made me humbled about the way that people live and how this organization really helps people in London to deal with the aftermath of the crime. And as you mentioned, I'm a founder of She Travel. It's a completely new initiative. We fully launched She Travel in July, so we had a fantastic launch event with great speakers. This is close to my heart project, and that's just something that was born out of from professional and personal background. We're doing lone female traveler workshops last year with my co-trainer, who's a fantastic woman with a lot of experience, and we saw different clients and their travel patterns, and we realized there was so much experience shared around the room from women who travel all over the world, some from them working for mining companies, some for expeditions, some are explorers, and there was just so much experience there. I myself had quite a turbulent year in 2017 when I got caught up in security incidents, so that was the catalyst for creating She Travel.
Could you remember back to an event that happened in the UK? There was a bombing incident during an Ariana Grande concert. Do you recall that incident?
Yes, I do. I remember that evening very well. I remember those first, actually, because we have social media monitoring tools. I remember those tweets coming in and something developing. So that was a horrific night. Something that at that time people didn't know that was a terrorist incident and the scale of it and the victims, children, and that was just absolutely horrifying.
In your view, since that incident, security measures, they've been increasing in the UK. Has there been a greater sense of security surrounding public events in the UK? Because for us in America, we generally don't think in these terms because we're such a large country, and events like 9/11 and things of that magnitude are so far in between. But in a place like the UK, Would you consider the UK a safe place these days in terms of security and travelers going to the UK?
It is. I mean, it was difficult years for UK and for metropolitans and bigger cities around Europe for now a couple of years with the terrorist attacks in Brussels and Paris. So definitely the security measures have been enhanced. For any kind of city now, if you go to a bigger city, you need to be aware of the security risks. Unfortunately, with the way that terrorism takes form in the modern society, you just have to consider that there's always a possibility and the risk of that happening. Day-to-day basis, I mean, any kind of traveler comes to the UK, the threat level is still high. However, people travel anywhere, any day, anytime. So it's just something that you have to consider as a likelihood of risk happening. It's just something that we now, in the modern world, live with.
Absolutely, yeah. The security concerns, I think, ever since 9/11 have definitely increased here domestically in the U.S. and I understand increasingly so in Europe and abroad. What role do you think social media plays, if any, in shifting the prior perception of solo traveling being brave and risky to adventurous and exciting?
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's an interesting phenomenon, and you can see, I mean, the corporate travel, female travelers doing the business travel is rising. Women travel more on their own, and that's due to many factors. Now, the standing of female and women has been changing with the higher purchasing powers for women, more freedom, more time. Also, even the changing family modules, so women have children when they're older. There's a lot of different indicators going on. And as you rightly said, and then there's social media. So these days with social influencers, you can see that some people make that as a living. So people are traveling, they're making money of being influencers, and they're showing that anybody at any time, at any given time, could travel anywhere in the world, so far-flung places. That creates an idea that we can all travel at any time, anywhere. I think it's absolutely fantastic that women are traveling now more. However, you can see in the news there have been some of the horrifying cases of violence that have been inflicted on solo female travelers. There is a question of how we travel and how well prepared we are. The question around social media is that although it shows that we can travel anywhere at any time, what people sometimes forget that within 6 hours of the flight, you're landing in a completely different culture where it has different traditions and different laws, legislation, social standing. So although women in the Western society, at least, are now traveling much more, it raises the questions of how ready are certain environments in receiving those solo travelers. It is something that it's worth mentioning that in some of the countries still, and a lot of the countries, women traveling their own is still seen something that's new and something that's not normal. So women go into these certain environments, they need to be aware of the risks and certainly the attention or any kind of risks that they put themselves into. It's not saying don't go, but don't go being prepared, and information is the key. So knowing the environments you're going into. So long way around explaining this, social media definitely plays a big role, especially amongst the younger generations.
You at She Travel on your social media run an almost daily campaign of female ambassadors posting their trips all over the world and really engaging audiences along their journeys and sharing their travel tips and so on. What kind of precautions and measures do you recommend women of all ages appropriate in order to comport with cultural and social norms to ensure safer travel arrangements that align with local views, considering your initiative is really meant to ensure safe travel? What are the kinds of things that can be relayed from your ambassadors to the general public about ways to align yourself with the local cultures to keep them safe?
The first thing that we always say is that it's the key is being prepared and have all the information. So do your research, know that the country that you're going to, and if it's very beneficial to know how females are perceived in that certain country, whether there's any kind of risks or, for example, high levels of sexual harassment or any kind of mention of drink spiking or somewhere, knowing the neighborhoods, knowing to get the information that you're able to get about the certain areas of the city, of the country that you're going to. So knowing that, doing that risk assessment where you're going to. And that is the key. If you're going to more of a medium high risk country, then absolutely being equipped with the knowledge and the training. So taking the right kind of either travel safety training, coastal environment training, being equipped with that kind of training and knowledge that if you do get involved in an incident, you have the best chances to respond to it in an appropriate way. Also knowing things like what kind of equipment and communications mechanisms you need, what kind of area you're going to, do you have good comms, what sort of apps, do they work, do you need a satellite phone, how do you keep in touch with people, how do you reach out when you do have an incident. Small things like for female travelers and saying, trying to arrive to a country at daytime, because generally the crime rates are higher during the nightfall or the nighttime. So small things like that. Choosing the safe hotels, so doing a bit of research about the hotel you're staying at, thinking about taxis you're using or the Uber in that country. If you're traveling for work, knowing your travel policies around whether you can use Uber or other app-based taxi providers, and always using the licensed taxis and not going on the street and hailing a random car, because essentially you're sitting in a stranger's car. So things like that, just being prepared, being well equipped and having all the right information. And always trust your gut feeling. If something feels wrong, then act on your gut feeling.
I've had a chance to do a little bit of homework. I'm not a female, and I can't really relate to the gender-specific safety concerns. But, doing a little bit looking into it, I realized that as a female solo traveler, going into a foreign country, to not just be aware of the local culture, but to also be aware of the central location, going to a hotel that is in a public space, but then also being aware if there are alleyways around that hotel area, to avoid those, especially at nighttime. And if you're traveling in public transportation, to make sure that you're using the most popular mode of transportation, the equivalent of an Uber, a Lyft, or whatever international equivalent, and avoid, situations where there are unmarked cars and unmarked modes of transportation, as that might heighten the risk of security issues going forward on your travels. That's really wonderful. Your initiative is able to provide that kind of information when people are traveling. It's an in-network kind of initiative that you have, and those members have access to that kind of information. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So it's online safe environment membership based. So with the membership, you get access to safety guides, which are written by our experts. So security consultants who have had heaps of experience in their own travel and working in challenging environments. So we've got a fantastic pool of those consultants who are writing articles for us. And then we've got country profiles with specific female travel advice. So for a country profile, we highlight if in that certain country there's a higher risk of sexual assaults or any kind of crime that we see that are more gender-based in terms of violence inflicted on female travelers. Generally, in certain societies, that's more of a domestic violence or something that doesn't happen to tourists, but then that gives a good idea of what kind of society you're walking into and what are the sort of views and how are females perceived in the society. So you know that you can respect and understand the culture and the traditions you're visiting.
Just to shift a little bit more locally, I know that as a woman, there are always concerns about going into, club environments, young people hanging out for entertainment. And there's that big risk and concern of spiking drinks, young men and older men, drugging women essentially without their knowledge. And that's really kind of an untalked about taboo that I don't think gets enough attention. I understand that travel security is one component of She Travel. Do you offer anything to your subscribers that give them tips in regards to local travel or even travel abroad, club or entertainment, nightlife environments that might help ward off some of those threats that are pervasive in the world everywhere today?
Yes, it's exactly. So the way what you're talking about the drink spiking, and that's something that we've recently covered in a safety guide, drink and food spiking, which does happen. I mean, not only when you go traveling, but it happens in local environments. And that's just something that we're looking to expand our safety guides on, something that, because when we talk about travel these days, travel doesn't only mean anymore overseas. Travel means in the bigger cities, travel means commute, travel means travel within the societies you're living in. So, for example, with drink and food spiking, we've got a safety guide talking exactly about what kind of substances are used, what are the signs that your food or drink might have been spiked, and what to do, recommendations what to do when it does happen. Something that we highlight during our lone female travel workshops is that drink spiking can also take place in client environments and work environments, and this has happened before. And that's just something that comes as a surprise for a lot of people.
Just really isn't talked about enough, and I feel like with statistics like 1 in 4, women everywhere in the world are assaulted in some sexual nature or another is just jarring. In terms of episodes of violence against females occurring in Western nations as often as their developing counterparts, what can women do to mitigate the circumstances while traveling abroad, particularly in places rife with gender stereotypes, social norms, entitlement, and patriarchy? Countries like in the Middle East, I know that's a big issue. Far East, that might be an issue where, women in the West are used to a certain standard of equality, despite the concerns we have in the West for that sort of thing. It's even more aggressive in those areas. So what does one do when traveling to a place where they know there is a heavy patriarchy, and they know that, like anywhere else, to come up and speak to female travelers, and oftentimes they're just trying to sell local goods? How can people be more aware and use the resources that you provide to sort of make that shift and be a little bit more cognizant of how a more patriarchal-driven society with older traditions, how can they protect themselves from that sort of environment?
Yeah, so it's a good point. And what we always say is, as I said, do your research and know the society you're going into. If there are any sort of restrictions on clothing or something that's saying, do not wear short skirts or expose yourself, then that means that you should respect the local traditions and culture, because you're not going there to change the environment. The key to safe travel is to, when you go into that more of a medium risk or high risk environment, or if there's a certain risks to female travelers of getting more attention, is try to have a lower profile and be more conservative, so you don't attract unwanted attention on curiosity sometimes that can be perceived as a sexual invitation. So that's just respecting the local culture and traditions and being respectful towards their religion. So that really, we emphasize that, even though you could do in certain more westernized cultures, you could wear those shorter skirts, but that's just something that's disrespectful towards their culture and may get you into trouble. If there's an incident and something does happen, and depending on either you're traveling on your own or you're traveling for work, think about beforehand what kind of mechanisms you have in place in order to get help. Your communication, and who knows where you are? Have you left your travel itinerary back home? Do you have an emergency app? How can you get some sort of response to help you out? It is also very important to be aware that in certain cultures and certain societies, reporting a sexual violence incident to the police might also mean that there might be some sort of re-victimization. So be aware of those environments where there are different types of social norms.
Just to jump into some of the statistics here, according to a survey from Booking.com in 2014, 72% of American women are taking solo journeys. American women have recently been ranked first in frequent solo travel and are most likely to take 3 or more trips in a given year, and 65% have vacation without a partner. A newer study shows female travel has risen by a factor of 2 to 1, outnumbering their male counterparts. I know that She Travel, and the current company that you also work for, offers a service called NGS that is based in the ability to locate people that are in dangerous crises, emergency situations all over the globe. What do you offer She Travel subscribers to ensure this new wave of female travelers are appropriately equipped with the highest standard of travel security correspondence.
So for She Travel members, this is information-based, and we educate female travelers with information that they can make their travel plans based on the best information received. As you mentioned with NGS, so that's NGS services, we do have Traveler Safety app where you can press the red button and then it will show your GPS location, and then it will trigger the response from NGS. What we have, for example, just to give you an idea, when our clients go traveling, they can also do safety check-in calls. So, for example, if you would go to more medium high risk country, you will set up safety check-in calls with the tracking team, and you are required at certain time to call in. And then when you haven't, they will give you a 60-minute grace period, and then they will start looking for you. So these are the mechanisms when you travel for work, more riskier environments you can put in place. So that will mean that if they do not hear from you, there's a certain escalation procedure in trying to then locate you and see whether you're in trouble. And then if, for example, during the terrorist attack or any kind of security incident, if something does happen, you can reach out to the company and ask for assistance. And that depends on either a medical assistance, security assistance, logistical assistance, whatever you need to get yourself out from that situation.
There was an online company called 101 Single Holidays, and they found in a study that more than 60,000 British travelers booked solo travel. That number rose 14% in 2017 from 2016. Experts predicted an additional 11% jump in 2018. As a UK-based company, what kind of community support does She Travel offer for those living in the UK and the European continent?
So yeah, for She Travel members, we've got members from all over the world now, which is great. We're going to expand in terms of the safety guides we've got, and for the local community and for the UK, I envisage the platform to have as much as information as possible in terms of sort of the safer cities, and we have a lot of interesting collaborations. So, for example, a safety app called Safe in the City, which looks at sexual harassment and different types of crimes in London, and you can report in without saying your name to the app. So I do advise you to go and have a look at it. Safe in the City, that's what it's called. So we're building strong collaborations with very powerful initiatives to join the powers in order to make travel safer for all the members.
I want to shift gears a little bit toward your own personal journey here. Patience, the podcast, is very much themed on this idea of patience, and we're always curious about the entrepreneurs that we have on our show. Dive a little bit deeper and divulge what role patience has played in their personal and professional journey. In particularly in your case, what kind of advice can you offer the next generation of female entrepreneurs, whether they're going into a related field or otherwise, that are interested in perhaps getting into the travel safety and security sector?
Yes, so patience, my God, that's a big word. My grandmother always used to say, have patience, and I never really I've always been quite impatient, but what I've understood now, especially throughout a couple of years, and then when building She Travel, because She Travel is something it's part of NGS, it's powered by NGS, and it was definitely a very challenging journey for me to build it and to bring my vision alive. So it's having that patience and having that self-belief, but also being okay when you don't have the self-belief. But the main thing for me has been my support network and surrounding myself with the friends and family who, at the time that I haven't had my self-belief, have been the keepers of my hope. And that's just something I'm forever grateful for. Another thing that I'm trying to learn and trying to teach myself in terms of patience is try to live a bit more in present, because everything takes time. Building a business, building an initiative, it's hard work. But if you don't enjoy the journey, how can you enjoy the destination or the goal? So it's just something that, for me, it's still work in progress. And then one thing I want to mention in terms of the women who want to get into the sector, what I'm dreaming of doing on a new initiative, Gracing, is Minerva Mission, which is which is a foundation to support women and young women who want to step into security and risk management field, and to support them by mentorship scheme. So have somebody you look up to and who inspires you, who can give you the inspiration and who you can learn from. So that's always been my mantra, is something that I look up to certain individuals and see how they've carved their career. And not that I want to, be exactly like them, but I see how they've walked their journey, and taking few of their best recommendations and aligning them with my own vision.
So that's incredible. For all those young female entrepreneurs that are looking to get into this travel sector, you've actually got a built-in mentorship program that you're building within the ecosystem at She Travel for them to really be able to look a little bit deeper into that network and find some individuals that might be able to help point them in their professional careers.
So that's just that's a separate from She Travel. That's something that I want to do on a volunteer basis, and we're building on that idea and sort of getting the network together. So I'd say watch this space. That foundation is something that is a vision at the moment. There is a landing page for the website, but that's just something that I want to sort of take further when we're ready.
Absolutely. Now, this is such a wonderful opportunity to really highlight and showcase some of the travel risks associated with female travelers, but we don't want to forget about the men. You guys out there, we haven't forgot about you either. There was actually an online booking platform named Hostel World that found a study from 2018 that solo female travelers have increased by a margin of 45%, 2015 and 2017, compared to a 40% increase for men. The plight of female travelers is uniquely harrowing. Violence against male tourism is equally as devastating. How can men get involved in She Travel and become ambassadors of safe travel for the women in their lives?
We've been really lucky with the supporting network of men being involved in She Travel as well. And that's what I said, I don't want to exclude men, I want to include men in the conversation. Right. So for example, with a lot of security directors, we've had a lot of conversations and, educating them on how are they able to support the female travelers and equip them with the information. For example, if you're sending a pregnant female traveler, what sort of assistance or information they might need. So that's something that we're now developing in terms of working together with the male security managers, because they bring so much valid information and experience to the table. So if you are a male, for She Travel platform at the moment, that's female only, but in terms of conversation and all the social media, we're collaborating in all fantastic different companies, and they don't need to be a female-only companies or female-only initiatives. So we're bringing men into working together with that initiative. You can be an ambassador, you can support the cause, and also we're planning on doing workshops for male security directors and equally for men in terms of talking about the risk for female travelers and how to, for example, support your colleagues when they go traveling.
In terms of She Travel's future, Annalisa, what kind of strategies does She Travel have in store over the next fiscal year regarding online expansion of subscription services, offerings, and overall outreach for female solo travelers? We
have global travelers on the platform now. We were looking to expand, grow the numbers, and also build more collaborations. So we're looking at, I'm very keen on the mental health and staying well in terms of your mental health and well-being while traveling. So looking at initiatives around that, providing different training sessions. So the collaborators and the training providers we're working with, She Travel members already have certain discount for the training. So what I want to do ideally is to build one-stop shop for everything. So for female travelers, before they go traveling, they can see the information, they can see what kind of insurance is, what kind of, in terms of training they should be doing, and they can have an access to the training providers. So really build that whole community of travelers who help each other and connect them with the right providers. So the next year, we're going to be busy in terms of expanding the networks, expanding the members, and also coming up with new fantastic and powerful initiatives with our collaborators to really raise awareness around the risks So if we talk about the risks as we see them in the real world, and we're not scared to actually mention that, there is sexual harassment or there is sometimes, something worse can happen, then we can really address and allow people who go through certain things to feel empowered by becoming the survivors rather than victims. And hopefully with that information, we can just make travel a bit safer for everyone.
I think that's the underlining goal here behind She Travel, and we're really excited about your growth as a company and your ability to really impact the lives of both men and women in terms of students traveling abroad, business travel, of course, and solo travel in general being such a rising population for females. We're really thankful you made some time to shed some light on this really, really relevant subject matter. And if anybody were to want to get out the word a little bit more for you and involve themselves, perhaps recommend these services to a friend, where can they reach out to you on social media, websites, and what's the best way they can really ensure that their future travels are just safer?
So you can check us out on Instagram. So we are She Travel Global, and we're on Twitter and She Travel Global. We are She Travel on LinkedIn, so you can use all of these means. And then you can contact us at info@shetravel.co.uk or check our website, shetravel.co.uk, and you can send us a direct message there. So there's ways and means about going to contact us, and we can give you a trial membership to try it out for a couple of weeks, see if you find that information useful. And I'm always happy to answer any questions, have a phone call, discuss your top tips for traveling.
So it was a wonderful opportunity we had today to discuss all these concerns. Thank you again for showing me a demo outlining some of the fine features of the information network and all the different tools that they had to use. Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to follow Patience of Podcast on Instagram, follow on Facebook, like, subscribe on YouTube. Annalise, we want to thank you again very much for joining us today and shedding some light on this very important matter.
Everyone be safe. Thank you so much, Annalisa, for being on the show.
Thank you so much, both, giving me that opportunity to raise awareness and just to talk about it, because I'm very passionate about She Travel, so always happy to talk about it.
It's been our pleasure having you on, and we're keeping an eye on you and She Travel. We wish you all the best growth. Thank you again for joining us for episode 8 of Patience of Podcast, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.